Welcome to the Sustainable Napier Committee meeting for the 11th of April 2024. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council Facebook page. Could we all stand for the opening karakia, please?
Te taua mai runga, te taua mai raro, te taua mai roto, te taua mai waho. Kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa. Home e, hui e, tai e.
Thank you. I have apologies from Mayor Wise, Councillor Bogue and Councillor Simpson. Moved by Mr Mawson, seconded by Mrs Crown. Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest? No conflicts of interest. No public forum. Any announcements by the Deputy Mayor?
No, thank you, Mr Chair.
Is there any notification of minor matters? You always ask that and just wonder what's going to come. Announcements by the Chief Executive. That's you.
By management.
Can I have confirmation of minutes for the 22nd of February 2024, please? Moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 1. Right, move on to agenda item 1, Napier Drinking Water Compliance Assessment for 2023. And we've got the man with all the knowledge.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, councillors and members of the public here and watching us online. The purpose of my report is to inform the Council on the Napier Water Supply Compliance Assessment for the 2023 calendar year. Usually I take my reports as read, but this time I want to highlight some of the things mentioned in the report. So the 2023 calendar year presents the first completed yearly compliance period under the new regulatory arrangements as set by the new drinking water authority regulator, Tamara ROI. Napier had to meet the highest, which is level 3 compliance requirements within all 3 compliance categories, which are divided under the new legislation as source water treatment distribution, while the general rules apply the same for all the suppliers, no matter how big their supply is. If I comment first line labeled A, Napier Water Supply Compliance Summary. So how this works, it's a little bit different to the arrangement that we had before when our regulator was Ministry of Health. So previously the compliance year was also different. It was from July to June. So now they changed it to the annual compliance periods. And in the past, the compliance would have been assessed by the drinking water assessor. And they would do an audit on us, do the compliance assessment, and we would provide our input, and they would produce a final report that we would present to you. So this is how things worked in the past. So now Tamara ROI approach is a little bit different. So each supplier has to do their own compliance assessment after the end of the compliance year, and they don't provide any feedback at all. So what I'm presenting you today is how we see the compliance assessment outcome was. So we didn't get any reply for Tamara ROI. If you take at page 2, where there are like some pie charts, I'm presenting this compliance assessment in terms of pie charts because it's much easier than going through 104 individual rules lines. It's just like a long spreadsheet, and like it's even more rules assessed. But this is like the very high level summary with how many rules we complied with and how many we didn't for each of the 4 categories. So for the G rules, general rules, we complied with 9 of them, and we failed with 4 of them. And there are various reasons for that. Some of the reasons were not in our power to change, for instance, but majority of them were. So the G rules, we complied 69%. S rules, so source water rules, we complied 97%. Treatment rules, we complied 82%. And D rules, which are the distribution rules, we complied 77%. Overall, like the last pie chart gives you an overall compliance assessment, which sits at 84%. I'm happy to answer any questions in the end about this and other topics that I'm going to mention and cover today. The main thing to get out of this compliance assessment is that of the plants where we have treatment in place, which are A2 and A3, we achieved full bacterial and protozoa compliance. So the UV treatment that we had in place demonstrated to work as we planned and as it should. So there were no issues there. Obviously, the issues of non-compliance with bacterial and protozoa rules comes from the sources where we don't have appropriate treatment. However, we do have a plan to address this, which I'm going to touch base later. One thing that I would like to point out that despite bacterial and protozoa non-compliance overall, we have not detected any microbiological adverse results in the distribution. So no total coliforms detected, no E. coli detected in the distribution. So that means that the water that we provide to our customers is safe or was safe for that period of time. So I think that's enough on this matter, but as I said, I'm going to be answering questions at the end. The next line I would like to bring to your attention is line number B, which is the review of the Napier Water Safety Plan by Tomara ROI. So we have been asked to submit the water safety plan to them for their review under the Section 32 of the Water Services Act 2021. As on 20th of March this year, and as of today, we haven't received any feedback or any heads up on where their assessment is or what we might expect to hear in the final report, despite following up, so we'll just have to wait for that. What I want to talk to you is there is a risk that Tomara ROI, when they review our water safety plan and the improvement plan that we have in place to eliminate the bacterial and protozoa non-compliance, that they might see it differently in terms of due dates. So we have proposed that we're going to develop 2 new bore fields and build 2 new treatment plants at those bore fields by the end of 2028. And this is the point in time where we would be fully compliant with all the treatment requirements. So the risk there is that they might see that too far in the future, and they might come back to us, to you, with expectations to implement that sooner. So we don't know what we don't know. This is just like a heads up that this might happen. I think it would be unreasonable from their side to push us and make us implement something that we're not going to need long term, like after 2028. The next line I would like to talk to is line number D, Napier Water Supply Related Customer Complaint Summary. So this is a very good representation to you and to the public that our quality-related issues in terms of customer complaints on water clarity specifically were baseline for 2023, and that proves that the work we've done in 2022 when Tamatea DMA was put in and A2 and A3 bores were put online is effective and it's working, which is good. And the last line, line number E, Christchurch disinfection residual exemption application outcome. So on June 2023, this committee has asked me to obtain, distribute, and report on the exemption decision paper on Christchurch applications with Tomara ROI. So we have requested the information from Tomara ROI on 28th of June. They have provided the document to us on 21st of February. Although the actual release date of those documents were in early November 2023, so I think they forgot about us a little bit there. I apologize for the delay, but it was not in my domain to keep it like track on it. So all two application papers and the outcomes from Tomara ROI are attached to this report. So Christchurch City Council basically lodged two different applications. One was to exclude treatment requirements for achieving bacterial compliance at their bores. So they are like in similar position as Napier. They don't have reservoir sites to achieve contact time at their bores. Plus they have more bores. So because they don't have any facilities to achieve contact time for chlorine to disinfect efficiently before they send the water to the reticulation, they have applied for an exemption that they wouldn't need the contact time and still achieve bacterial compliance. So the Tomara ROI view on that was that that is not possible, that the rules are what they are, and that you need to achieve contact time. So this is like the first report that is attached to the to my report, and the second one is the actual application to get an exemption for the residual in the network. This is what Christchurch City Council submitted for one of their supply zones, which is called Brooklands Kainga. So this is like north of Christchurch. It's a very small zone, around 1,400 people. And that was declined because of various reasons mentioned in this report. For instance, they didn't have a specific water safety plan. They didn't have the water risk management plan in place. Not all source water risks were adequately addressed. Water loss was too high. They didn't have inadequate, they had inadequate backlog prevention program and so on. The third exemption paper I added is on Rakaya Huts assessment by Tomara ROI and Rakaya Huts, which is a Selwyn District Council, very small supply, medium-sized supply that has been approved. So they were the first supply that gained exemption for the chlorine residual in their network. So that's from me on this report, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
So do we have any questions, please? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
That's right.
Osborne.
Haley and I were fighting for the first question.
You won.
Thank you, Anzi. Just a few questions from me. I just wanted to get, I suppose, the structure of the assessment straight in my mind. So our independent water entity, as assessor, Taumata ROI, provides no independence over our annual compliance, no auditing of our annual compliance reporting now. Is that what I heard?
That is correct. So whatever we submit is like you're submitting information into a black hole. So you don't have any, they don't have any any processes in place or obligations to report back. We see this, yes, we accept your assessment or we don't accept your assessment. So we don't get any feedback and we don't expect any feedback.
Okay. Have we received a we accept or we don't accept? You said those were the two options that you would usually see.
The only thing you receive back is that the report has been submitted by the IT system where you submitted to. So this is the only confirmation you have that you have submitted it.
Okay, thank you.
Just another note on that, as far as auditing goes. So our annual audit does still require, or are still requesting, that we provide reports on our compliance. That's another, it's been a bit of a can of worms because they report on a financial year and not a calendar year, so it's out of sync with our reporting to Te Mata Arawai by 6 months. And they are still auditing us on the old drinking water standards.
Okay, thank you. Great value for money for the taxpayer happening there. Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's all right, a couple other questions. I note as you work through your self-assessment of compliance in the report, you note a number of non-compliance areas. What I was expecting to see was some sort of action plan. I see you note that by the 2028 year, you expect us to be fully compliant. What sort of governance visibility do we have over that action plan and related to budgets? Will we see that come through LTP, or where's the confidence, I suppose, that we're on target for those?
So I can speak to the operational non-compliances, like the operational reasons for non-compliances. So not everything is assets related. So for instance, we felt majority of the rules, or I wouldn't say majority, like a lot of the rules, because we didn't have adequate processes in place, means documentation and how we do things, or they're like lacking information, or were in draft format, or things similar to that. We have an action plan, of course, in the Water Safety Plan Improvement Plan for those actions to be closed out. People are assigned to them. They're like, that is like work in progress. So when the new legislation came in force by Te Mata Arawai, they came up with a lot of different documents that needed to be put in place. And that just requires time and effort and somebody basically to write them and bring all the stakeholders together. So we've done some, we haven't done all of them, but we are on track to, we have a plan.
Thank you. My next question is around, and I think it was helpful, thank you, to attach those decision reports from Te Mata Arawai on the exemption applications that have happened around the country. I think I'm reading between the lines that your view is that we would be unsuccessful for similar reasons to some of the Christchurch reasons given in that letter. I just wonder if you could confirm that for us. And I suppose in particular, I'm also interested in that residual decision that's been made and what our total loss is in our network as well, because those seem to be sort of key aspects in those decisions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. So in terms of Christchurch application to eliminate some of the requirements for the bacterial treatment at their bores, we have lodged the same applications with Te Mata Arawai, but then we retracted it as we were advised that we're most likely not going to be successful. We got some of our majority of our money back of the application, which was good. And now we see the outcome from Christchurch is what would happen if we were like keep it in there. In terms of applying for the chlorine exemption, chlorine residual exemption in the network, my view is that it would be very hard for a large supply in New Zealand to achieve the exemption granted by Te Mata Arawai for various reasons. It was extremely hard for a small supplier like Rakaya Huts to achieve it, although I still see some gaps in that supply, but they have achieved it. But I don't see it for a big supply at this stage, unless you really invest and lift up your game significantly, because that's just another level of service that you're providing to the community if you want to go chlorine-free. It's just like...
Thank you. And are you, through you, Mr. Chair, aware of what our current leakage is in the system?
I can get you the exact figures from our last annual report, but I think it was in the range of 16% calculated losses.
22.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, my final question is obviously part of our questioning in this matter is around meeting community expectations around our water supply, and we've seen over the last few years a reduction, I think, in the number of complaints we're receiving as the network improvements have been made around clarity, smell, taste, that sort of thing. Are you in a position to give us an update on where those sort of community-facing feedback is at? Are we still seeing a reduction? Are we within acceptable limits of complaints, noting there was always some complaints about the water supply?
Yeah, so I think that has been covered under the line D, which summarizes the customer complaints for the 2023 calendar year. And I've also, in the second table, there is also compliance, customer complaints summary from 2018-2023, and you can see in 2023 basically what we've come down to is a baseline. So there's always going to be some discoloration events in the network because we might shut down the pipe for maintenance reasons, which will cause swish-wash because the water is going to have to reach some homes from the other direction. So this is always going to happen, but what we see now is the baseline as it was pre-chlorination, pre-2017.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
thank you. My apologies. I'd skipped over
no
service
worries.
requests, so thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just one point. Were you you asked about the LTP as a path for their work?
Well, I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think the answer to my question around the action plan was that there's the Water Safety Plan Improvement Plan that is operationalised in the team, and so I'm not necessarily expecting us to see that probably at LTP. I'm wondering if that's something that, do we see that at quarterly report? Is that updated at any other stage of your reporting cycle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so we do report summary of the progress against the Water Safety Plan Improvement Plan. So this is in my report under line C. As on 19th of February, so the below improvement actions recorded in the improvement plan were divided into 3 categories. Assets category, so we had 16 improvement actions on that list and to have been closed out in the last 12 months. Then we have investigation and research category. There are like still 2 on that list with 1 action closed out. And the main category where we need to do the most improvements is operational category, where we have 70 improvement actions on that list, while 9 have been closed out in the last 12 months.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that makes sense for it
Yeah.
to be in the compliance annual report. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora, through the chair. Thank you for the report, and I'm interested in the piece where we're non-compliant for bacteria and protozoa protections, and we expect to be until 2028. So that's a good 4 years away. So I'm assuming the risk to public health is quite low, but would you be able to talk us through what that sort of practical health risk is to the public that we are carrying at the moment, and if we have any other mitigations in place that provide another level of protection rather than the one that's specified?
Okay, yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair. So, yes, by the end of 2028, we're going to have 2 new bore fields with 2 new treatment plants, which will have UV treatment, which will deal with bacterial and protozoa contaminants at the source. So whatever is going to be leaving the water treatment plant sites is going to be fully compliant. So current situation is, although we're non-compliant and we were like compliant under the previous legislation, under the Ministry of Health legislation. Nothing changed, so the same risk was then when we were compliant, and now we're not compliant. When you assess risks of protozoa, it's a very low risk, so we know we're getting our water from a very good source and confined aquifer. So that means we understand our age of the water very well, and none of our water is less than 2 years old. This is like the, average is 6 to 15 years, I would say. So I would have to look at the data. From microbial risks arising from the aquifer, we believe the risk is very low, unless 1931 happens today, and you have a major earthquake that might compromise your bores, your casings, shift the confining layers of the aquifers that might change completely the game, of course.
Just to understand that further, can you explain to me, sorry, I don't understand the science of why water age is tied to protozoa levels?
Yeah. So as the aquifer is being recharged by precipitation, and the catchment for Heratanga aquifer is very large, and it goes to Ruahinis and Kauekas. So all that catchment basically ends up in 3 major rivers that contribute into the aquifer, which are Naruroro, Tukituki, and Tutaikuri. And by the time that water depletes from the river and recharges the aquifer, it takes at least 2 years for that water in the aquifer to move towards the sea and to reach our bores. And by that time, the die-off of the microorganisms happen, and that's why you don't expect them to be there. They shouldn't be there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, and thank you for that very good explanation. Mine is a financial one, in that if the pressure comes from Taumata Arawai to implement the bores or the work prior to 2028, when it's scheduled to achieve, what is the financial implication for the council in cost to actually achieve that? As we move into the long-term plan, which is only a 3-year plan, we've got lots of financial pressures. So what would the financial pressure be if we needed to bring that work forward?
Yeah, good question. Through the chair. Essentially, the cost, my assumption would be that if we were to fast track the work, the cost would be higher to fast track it, because we would have less time to plan and design, essentially.
Can you give a ballpark figure?
I'd be just guessing, but it could be escalated by 50 to 100%.
Okay.
Councillor Crystal.
Thank you for the paper, through the chair. Just about the water safety plan, obviously we've sent it in, you haven't heard anything back. We, I assume, are working to that water safety plan currently, are we? And have you talked to, so we're working to a plan that hasn't yet been approved. Have you talked to any other local bodies and councils? Has anyone's water safety plans been approved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. So this is another difference between the Ministry of Health regulatory body and Taumata Arawai. So Taumata Arawai does have ability to review the water safety plan, but they don't approve water safety plans. So they've pushed all the responsibilities to the suppliers. So that's their approach. On the other hand, they have set out the rules that we need to follow, which is not a little bit contradictory in approach, but they will not be approving any water safety plans. They might review it, and they might say, oh, we think this area needs a little bit more work, a little bit more input, or they might recommend something, but they will not be approving anything, and they have not approved any water safety plan that I would know of as approval process.
Sorry, through the chair, that's very unusual for I would have thought, like, for example, when you do a food safety plan, it has to get approved through the Food Safety Authority. So that's,
Yeah.
a very unusual process.
Is
Just
that
a
que-
comment.
Are you asking a comment or question or
Pretty
comment?
much, just a comment.
Yep, through the
Okay.
chair. Yeah, just that, on that, Te Mata Arawai sees the suppliers as the experts in the field. So they basically shift that responsibility onto the suppliers.
Okay, do we have any further questions? Okay, do I have a mover for the paper, please? Deputy Mayor?
Can I move a slight amendment rather than endorse receive?
Yep,
Thank you.
I looked at that very seriously. So you're moving it with that?
Yeah, with
Do I have a
that small
second? Councillor Brown. Would you like to?
Oh, just very briefly, thank you, team, for all the work you're doing in this space. I think there has been a massive shift over the last number of years in the way that we work in this space and the reporting back to council, and it just shows the seriousness in which we take the supply of our water to our community. I do think there is some work to be done with the interaction with our independent water regulator. I think the fact that they've moved away from having drinking water assessors do the compliance report sort of removes some of that independence, which obviously at a governance level we like to see that sort of audit or independent assessment on our progress. So, and that's removing that from us. So I do think that's a step back from them, which I don't think is a great use. A great use of their time to not be prioritising the independent compliance reporting, auditing of councils. So, happy to receive the report. Obviously not in a technical space personally to endorse that work because it's not my area of expertise. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any other comments? I think it's a little bit of you don't know what you don't know to a certain point, which is very difficult for the staff. But I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks very much. Good report and well answered the questions for being in an area that's unknown to a certain degree. So thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, the pressure water system, sewage system. Andrew.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, councillors, everyone else. For Andrew Tapuingoa, my purpose of my report this morning is to have the council adopt the proposed pressure sewer systems policy. So the adoption of the policy will allow pressure sewers to be used for development within the areas of Napier. Pressure sewers are a direct alternative and work in conjunction with traditional gravity sewers. The use of pressure sewers enables development in more areas, such as hill or rolling terrain, where traditional sewers may not be feasible or indeed practical. It also enables development on sites where there may not be enough fall for a gravity sewer to work. Pressure sewers are generally more resilient, especially when it comes to challenging geotechnical conditions, such as liquefiable soils. They're also far better when it comes to disaster recovery. Because pressure sewer systems are sealed, there is a negligible risk of stormwater intrusion into the system. The policy will allow Council to designate areas where pressure sewers must be used through the Code of Practice for Land Development and Subdivision. Pressure sewers would be allowed for developments in all areas outside of those designated areas with the approval of council officers. So there would be no area that would be precluded from it, but there would be areas where you must. Pressure sewers are already allowed for in Napier through the Trade Waste and Wastewater Bylaw 2022. The on-property pressure sewer equipment will be owned and maintained by the property owner. The boundary kit and the main line that connects them all together will be owned and maintained by Napier City Council. Failure to maintain the on-property equipment would become an offence under the existing wastewater bylaw. And lastly, this proposal, or the proposed policy, aligns very strongly with what is already allowed for in Hastings District Council. So the risk of misalignment going forward is not there. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Councillor Crystal.
Just through the chair, I remember having a workshop on this, I think a couple of years ago, so it was very interesting at the time. But just one thing with that, I noticed, that it's kind of one dwelling with a unit. So are they dependent on how many people actually live in the house? Is there a maximum amount of people? Because, they've got that on-site storage. Is that a thing on each property?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, it is, but it's allowed for with multiple sizes of tanks.
Okay.
So through the design process, you would select the tank size that was applicable to the dwelling that you were proposing to connect. And that would be obviously approved through the existing consenting processes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you. Through the Chair, just a couple of questions, if I may. Firstly, you mentioned the fact that there will be consequences for failure of maintenance around the system for the property owner. How do we intend to monitor that? And does it create a level of additional work for our staff?
Through the chair, yeah, I can. People, when sewage starts coming out of the ground on people's property, they tend to
Get in touch.
yeah, pretty quickly. And if it's deemed to be at their fault through lack of maintenance or negligence, that we would then potentially pursue under the wastewater bylaw.
Yeah, that's correct. I guess in supplementary to that, in the documents that we have developed that go with the proposed policy, there is a homeowner guidance document which will be given to all people who are connected to pressure sewers, which steps through a lot of, well, all of the requirements for what can and can't go down your sewers, what's going to affect your equipment. There's also a requirement through the consenting process for the property owner to show that they have entered into a maintenance contract.
Thank you.
It will be checked at least annually. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I was hoping that there would be an element of education in that, so that it wasn't just, an react type situation. And my other question was around the approval of vendors. Is this normal in this industry? Again, it's not my area of expertise, but I guess my question is angled from the sense of, are we disadvantaging any local businesses from being able to do this work, etc.? Open to comment.
Yeah. My understanding is that it is generally common practice. We are not the only council who would be working in this means. So what we have proposed is for an approved supplier sort of system, whereby at the moment, or in the current proposal, there would be two suppliers, and then any local contracting company, plumbing company would be able to install those systems. By managing the systems that can be installed, you are managing the risk to the council network because you can have obviously different pumping systems which generate different pressure head, and then you increase the risk of pumps trying to fight each other through the system, so on and so forth. We did discuss in developing the policy and the technical documents that go with it, whether or not we should work through an open procurement system. We decided that that introduced more risk to the council than what we were willing to accept.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do I have any?
Sorry, through the chair, just regarding the, you said you had a homeowner's manual and they have to sign a maintenance. When the house is sold, how is that then passed on to the next people? Is that going to be, is it on the title? Is it on some sort of information so that the next owners know? I know.
Yeah.
Through the chair, that's a great question. I'm uncertain. We can find out, but
Because unless the owner tells you, you may never know. Is it flagged on the alarm or something like that? I don't know.
In the building
Yeah.
consent. Building consent.
Have we got some answers coming somewhere? No?
No, I'd say we'd have to look into whether it could be part of the.
Well, there'd have to be some provision put in where it is passed on, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Through the chair, that they did mention that there was documentation for the development side. So I'd imagine it would be left in a situation where it's with the oven or whatever manuals, but certainly good to have that highlighted and have a proper answer for that.
Yeah, it's just something will need to be covered. I know if you buy a house and it's got one of those Euro systems, you inherit that with it, and it's, I think I've got one, and it's through the regional council, and it's passed over with the sale. Councillor Crown.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest that we add that to our action register, that information to come back to us?
Yes.
Like,
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Kia ora, Andrew. As part of your presentation, you said there will be instances where people are required to install and instances where it's optional. In the actual policy itself, I found it difficult to find where the requirement is to install. Does that sit within a different document, for instance, the trade waste bylaw or another
through the chair,
bylaw?
yeah, that would sit in the code of practice.
Right. Are you able to
that's what Andrew
run me through in
mentioned.
which circumstances you are required to install?
It'll be based on the location, like geographically. So it'll be the terrain or the, like Andrew mentioned, if there's no low fall, that would be the areas where we would require it. But we haven't, I don't believe that has been defined yet.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just thinking that through, are you thinking site-specific or geographical GIS layers that would indicate certainty in development or building to people in those areas, whether or not they would trigger the requirement versus the optional? How?
Through the chair, yes, I think that's right. Yeah, it'll be defined in the, well, like I said, in the code of practice, we would map out where the areas were. It wouldn't be on a property by property. It'd be more of an area rather than a specific property.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we're adopting a policy without the parameters of where it applies. Is that correct?
So,
Perhaps,
just a question that's come up, I think, is there provision to review the policy if we adopt it, or modify it, or, because I can see there's what the Deputy Mayor's getting at, there's a couple of gaps.
Through the chair, as Andrew highlighted, this part of the reason for wanting to adopt the policy is because it opens up more areas for development, but we can't. I guess it's a chicken-egg situation. We haven't actually defined that in the code of practice yet because it's not policy.
Allowed for.
If I could just step in there, there is an option there, 2.6 option C, agree in principle with the proposed system and request council officers resolve specific issues before it's adopted. So it looks like there's that option to review, as Councillor Crystal said, how it moves from one landowner to the other, and also an opportunity where it might be able to be introduced. I'm pretty sure in other local authorities it's almost is on a developer sort of process where the developer interested in a particular piece of land that might be quite disjointed from council infrastructure would come in and discuss that with the council officers to look at options. So, but yeah, it looks like that's an opportunity for us to report back to council on those couple of matters. Agree in principle with the proposed and request council officers resolve specific issues before it is adopted.
Oh, well. Can't adopt it really, can we?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's a really good suggestion from Jamie. I think there's a couple of areas. I guess I was looking for assessment criteria or some parameters around when the must versus the may apply, which is what I would expect us to endorse for you. And I think that's a good thing to tease out what Councillor Crystal mentioned as well around whether or not it goes on the property file or in the building consent or some mechanism for it to pass from owners to owners. So I think that's a good suggestion, Mr. Chair, from your executive team member.
The option of item C, which Jamie just outlined, is probably what I'd suggest. Is there any other questions? Councillor Gregg.
Yes, thanks, through the chair. I just note that it's reliant on electricity to work the pressure system. Okay, so in the event of a disaster, say we have a week without power, how long can households cope without having this system empty?
So, through the chair, the on-property storage has an allowance of, give or take, a design allowance of 24 hours. The control panel that sits outside of the house has a specific generator plug. So it's designed with resilience in mind. You would plug it directly into a generator and you can pump out as normal.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through the chair. I'm interested in, you mentioned failing to maintain these pieces of equipment will cause an offence. I'm just thinking through how will we approach that as council, because I note that it's about not putting inappropriate things down your wastewater system, and as a mother of 2 children, sometimes it might not necessarily be intentional from an adult perspective anyway, that things happen. So are we looking to fine people for failures, or is it more like we would recoup our costs for any repairs we had to do? What sort of approach would we take to enforcing that offence?
Through the chair, yeah, good question. I would say in the case of something accidentally went down the, ultimately, if you were found, my assumption would be that if you were found and you had good maintenance records, that would be evidence that you've been a responsible operator or owner for the system. So yeah, ultimately, obviously we want to educate people not to intentionally put things down that can affect our network, but Yeah, it would be around evidence. As far as fines or things, I would think generally we would recover costs associated as a minimum. So if we had to go to a site and clean up something or whatever that was caused by that, then that cost would be recovered as a minimum.
So, in my mind, sort of a fine and cost recovery are almost quite separate things. Are we looking at are fines on the table, I suppose is...
Probably a bit of a difficult question for you to answer, really. We're probably, from a governance point of view, to give them the tools to deal with it, not to tell them how to approach each case.
And it comes under the wastewater bylaw. Yeah. Okay, I haven't got that with me, but I can...
Every set of circumstances is probably different. It governs how you would deal with it. Would that be right? I think Councillor Brown's more worried about the fact that we're going to go hard on everybody. Would that be?
I suppose I'm thinking of, say, a family in a household who are extremely busy, and this is something that probably isn't top of mind all of the time to keep up on your maintenance of your sewage system when you're putting food on the table and everything else. And I could see that this would be something that would easily slip the minds of people, and I'm just wondering how punitive we would look to be in our approach, I suppose.
I think obviously it's a sharp knife to walk in that the responsibility for maintenance clearly sits on the property owner, right? And we have looked to manage the risk on everybody by ensuring that the property owner has a maintenance regime and that they are aware of generally what is going to be acceptable to put down the sewer. The flip side of that, I think, as my colleague has pointed out, is that if, council or anybody was called to a site where the property owner has had an issue, the property owner was capable of showing clear maintenance records, mistakes happen. The wastewater bylaw allows for a specific consequence.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to.
Yep. Yeah, I get that. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
It's through the chair. I know this is not new technology around the world, just new to us here. What's the lifespan of a setup like this for a homeowner?
So, through the chair, my understanding, obviously every part is unique. The design life of the pump is around 25 years. It would be considered like tyres on your car. The car will last a lot longer, but the pump will wear out.
Yep.
Yeah. The pump itself, or the consumable parts within the system, it's designed to be easily accessible, easily maintainable. Should the pump or any parts fail for any reason, it's a small part of the system and it's easily swapped out.
I like that 25 answer, that was good.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
Just back to the maintenance, I like your car analogy, and I was thinking the same. I imagine it's like getting a warrant on your car. So, and we're going to have approved suppliers that do this, I assume, the maintenance. So, if people fail to get their warrant, would there be a way that they basically, the council gets notified that these properties have not met their conditions of maintenance? Like failed their warrant, well, they haven't got their warrant on a car, or is it just going to be up to them, and then when it fails, it's, I just wondered how that's how that's going to work.
I can possibly jump in here. That helps. As Andrew said, it'll be through the maintenance provisions. So the homeowners will sign up to a maintenance system with the suppliers, and the suppliers will drive that process. They'll go around and knock on the door at whatever interval they need to knock on the door, check the equipment's working correctly. If there's any issues they've perceived, as Andrew said, these units are pretty easy. If there was a small fault in a particular area, they won't necessarily repair that particular little fault. They'll just lift the whole thing out and put a new one in, and that's why it's particularly sort of seamless. So the urgency, I suppose, for issues associated with maintenance would sit with the provider of that service.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can I have a mover for the recommendation A and C?
Just C. Thank you.
Just C?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to receive the report?
It says reject is A.
No?
Officer's recommendation.
Top of the recommendation is receive the report, and C is agree in principle to oppose.
Sorry, I was looking at options A, B, and C. So you're looking at officer's recommendation A.
A and C from the...
And C in
Yeah.
place of officer's recommendation B from the options section. Happy to move those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mawson? Would you like to speak?
Yeah, really happy in principle to have this piece of equipment used. I think it will, we know as a city we're becoming more, or we need to be more compact rather than spilling out, and we know that our future development is into the hills, which provides some challenges for things like our services in this space. So I think it's really practical. I think the policy is actually really clear in terms of what our obligations are and what the homeowners' obligations are in terms of maintenance, and quite comfortable that there's sort of an education first approach as well. But I do think we need a little bit more clarity on those two areas that we set out around how the maintenance or passing on the knowledge of the existence of the equipment from owner to owner occurs. And I think that will be really simple to probably work through with the regulation department, who obviously hold property files, as well as that parameters around where the must use comes in. I think that's what I'm particularly interested to see. So where there is no option to use it as a must imposed by council as part of the consenting process, I'd like to see some clarity on that. So happy to endorse in principle and receive the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you
Just
like
through the chair,
reserve
just to
your
add, I'm sure that as stated by staff, we're not the first people to have the system. So I'm sure a quick conversation with a partner council could quite easily get the documentation required for the new homeowners to either be a contract or whatever to sign. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath?
Just through the chair, support where we're heading with this. Good modern technology. But one thing I would just add is when these start being implemented and go live, just that our depot water team have been upskilled and trained in how they all work and how they do their thing. So it'd be nice just to know there's a plan in place to upskill our side of things as well.
Thank you. So I've had 3 positives. Anyone against it? Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just so you'll have to bring this paper back to our next meeting? Is that gives you plenty of time to sort out those?
Yes,
few-
we should be able to come back with some answers by then. Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Cheers. Item 3, request for road closure for vehicle trials. Mr. Maley, and I've also got Jeff and Kim from the club who are here to assist. Should you require any questions?
Tēnā koutou, Chair, councillors. It's a relatively straightforward report. Oh, sorry, I've got Jeff Mitford-Taylor, who's the club president, and I've also got Kim Hunter, another committee member, who was very helpful in me pulling this together. So I think this is a piece of legislation that's used very frequently, particularly in rural councils where they have a lot of rally events and road closures. The only reason this is different from our standard road closure for roadworks, for instance, is the fact that the activity going on does have some risk that's outside our normal sort of remit, and so the legislation just requires a certain sort of reassurance to council that insurance is covered and that safety is covered, but it also gives the event organisers the opportunity to suspend speed limits driving on the left, and if there are any sort of road signs in the zone, they will be suspended as well. The club's headquarters are at the Papakura Domain, so the Sandy Road location is right next to their clubhouse. I do have to correct an error in my report. It's actually only an 1/8 mile, so it's around about 200 metres rather than a 1/4 mile. So it's significantly lower frontage than I was expecting. But yeah, so any questions on the regulations, I guess, for me, and hopefully Jeff will be able to answer any questions about the event you may have.
Yes, through the chair. Just one question. How many actual property owners are affected by this?
Through you, Chair, I believe it was, no, I was looking at the 1/4 mile, but it's around about 6 private property owners, and then there are 5 tenants of the Papakura Domain.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. And just further to that, have those property owners given authority, or are we still to approach?
So through you, Chair, my understanding is that the club has approached some of them, but it will be a condition that they will have to provide us evidence that they've got that approval.
So
Which
this,
is, I guess, part B of the recommendation, but
yeah.
I'll hand over to Jeff.
So approving the temporary closure, we approve it, but it's subject to these conditions being met.
Yes, and that'll be to the satisfaction of the Executive Director of Infrastructure, which is Jamie Russell.
Through you, Mr Chair, if there are objections, I note you lay out the process in the paper, that the club will go through to receive those approvals from landowners. If there are objections that they dealt with, is that where the delegation to the Executive Director comes in?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's
Thank you.
Because of the late notice, we've had to put something in that covers.
Yes, and sorry, through you, Chair. Just to add, we have actually advertised the road closure, and that'll be in tomorrow's paper. But that doesn't commit us to anything. It's just we needed to get ahead of the game a little bit with the process.
Have the Hot Rod Club received any feedback from neighbours at all at this stage?
Good morning. Yes, I must point out we have previously run this event with council approval, and the neighbours are very supportive of us. In actual fact, there is only, I believe, one direct neighbour affected by our closure. Most of it, I mean, we were in such a minor area, basically outside the domain between the Speedway gates and our gate. So in actual fact, even with the road closed, they could still have access to their property, so it doesn't directly affect them. But we do have the support of the Brookfields community, especially, I don't know if the council would be aware, but in the last year we've offered the use of our club rooms to them, and they have used that on many occasions for various events, supporting them post-cyclone, you know. So, yeah, no, we do have support of the neighbours, absolutely.
So that one person you talked, or one section, have they agreed already?
We were still waiting for council approval for this, and it will be conditional on that, obviously.
Yes.
But we have had no issues in the past and found the neighbours very supportive.
Thank you. Have any further questions? Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor. Can we have a joint?
Never seen them.
Oh, no. Councillor McGrath, you move it, and seconded by Councillor Mawson. Would you like to speak on it?
Certainly. Just through the chair. Hey, look, this is a good bunch of guys, apparently, according to their website. Great bunch of people that love custom cars. I know in the past they've done a bit of community work. They've run one of Hawke's Bay's biggest events. Just good guys. Like I said, they've done it before. Our neighbours do it in Hastings. It's not new. Good luck with your day, is what I can say. Yep.
Thank you.
Look, I think through the chair, this is an awesome show of a group getting together and having a proactive approach. I mean, every single community gets hit by boy races and so forth in their community with, I mean, we've got a lot more judder bars than we have ever had, and we know that the community don't like them. This is a proactive group that actually want to run a safe event in a road with proper road closures, and I just wish other people would do the same.
Is there anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Terry.
Yeah, definitely Te Toko, just highlighting the date, but may the 4th be with you.
Okay, we have 3 for it. Anyone against? So I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Good luck.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Any business?
You probably have a couple of councillors along there keeping an eye on it in their cars. Item 4, licence to occupy reserved Ridge Top Reserve. Thank you, Brian.
Good morning, and I've got Amelia here who is our parks policy planner, because obviously Jason Tickner's now left council. So this is a Reserves Act matter. We're just seeking approval to grant a licence to occupy to a service provider for operate a communication station and erect a communication station on top of Ridgetop Reserve, which is out the back of Taradale. It's important to, as part of the Hawke's Bay Region Civil Defence Emergency Management radio network in the conversion from an analogue system to a digital system. So very important. So this becomes a very important part of that network. So I don't see any problems. It's allowed under the Reserves Act. There's no permanent damage to the reserve. We've checked. We don't require a building consent or a resource consent because of the small footprint. So I don't see any problems with it, so but happy to answer any questions.
So this is a bit of a must for our communication system.
For the Hawke's Bay Region Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, yes, as part of that network, radio network.
Any questions?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Brian. So we're issuing it to a company called Communicate Limited.
Yes.
And are they engaged by our civil defence?
Yes.
Okay. So is there any compensation back to council?
No, it's not proposed to charge a licence fee because it's sort of in the greater interest. This goes there, so it's not so much a commercial undertaking by them. I mean, they're providing the service to the Hawke's Bay councils in terms of this network.
Right.
So no, it's not proposed
So it's
to
not
charge
a
a licence
profitable business venture as such for this independent entity?
Well, they obviously would have to cover their costs. So the councils would have to pay a licence fee to communicate for the use of that network.
Right, and you're comfortable it would be best practice not to charge this
the
independent company for the occupying
so small,
of our
it's only a
reserve?
metre by a, what did I say? I can't remember now, metre by a metre or something. Yeah, I'm quite comfortable
You're
with
quite
that.
comfortable? Yeah. I was just interested in precedent for utility suppliers and things like that, where we're offering up parcels of reserve to private entities without compensation.
Totally. And there is a subsequent agenda item.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, quick second question just to be nosy. What does it look like? Is it a tower? Is it a container?
A mast, yes. Okay. So there will be a a little fenced cabinet and then a mast.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Yes, Crystal.
Through the chair, just are there any restrictions on the skyline in that area? Will it be really visible in that, obviously in Taradale, and also access to get to it to maintain that? How is that easily done? Through Churchill Drive, I'm assuming?
The access would be through the dockland below, the Redcliffe dockland. In terms of the skyline, there's already towers up there actually just beside this on private land. We've checked out, we don't require resource consent. It's compliant with the district plan. So no, quite comfortable.
Councillor Taylor.
Obviously, many of you haven't walked up there, but have you spoken to the landowner immediately adjacent to where that's going to be?
Discussions have been held. There is feedback, not particularly happy, but he already has communication stations on his private land on that western side. Yeah. And we're quite confident, as I said, it doesn't require resource consent, doesn't require building consent, and under the Reserves Act, we're quite confident that we've looked at all aspects there and it is allowable. We don't need to undertake public notification because of the minimal impact on the users of the reserve and no permanent damage to the reserve.
Just supplementary, Chair. Looking at the location, it will be accessible from what is termed as Maggie's Way, the walk up there. So will there be protection because the public will be able to access it? So will it be secure or protected so that it cannot be damaged?
There will be a fence around it, around the cabinet and the mast. But the footprint is only 1 metre by 2 metres on that reserve, so very little impact. Won't impact anybody walking through. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Gregg, seconded. Councillor Mawson, would you like to speak?
Yes, through the chair, just to say this is wonderful. It's robust communication infrastructure for Hawke's Bay. Thank you.
Necessary, no-brainer.
Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, item 5, change of purpose of reserve, Marine Parade. Brian, again.
So this has previously come before council. This is just a final resolution required once again under the Reserves Act, just to resolve to change the purpose of the reserve land that the War Memorial, the new War Memorial here adjacent to this building, sits on. So we've now done the subdivision, we've got the new titles, because previously the construction of the War Memorial straddled 2 different titles, which is not really allowed. So we've sorted all that out. We've had public notification, no feedback. So now we suggest it's appropriate that council pass this final resolution so we can get the purpose of the reserve changed from local purpose passive recreation reserve to local purpose community building reserve. It's a bit of a technicality under the Reserves Act.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
I was just happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Moved, seconded by Councillor Brown.
Oh, you're going to do it?
Oh,
I said your name.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Oh, no, just to support, I think, well-written paper, like you say, a bit of a technicality. We do have an action point for council to be reported on the small sort of tidy-up things that are required for the War Memorial, and this is, I assume, one of those as well. So it's great to have one of those ticked off the list. And thank you for, I know, all of the paperwork that goes in behind bringing this resolution, so thank you.
Thank you. Would either of you like to speak?
I think I did.
All covered?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 6. Brian again.
So this item seeks a final resolution to declare part of Tarryhouse Street and West Shore stopped, a very, very small section. And when we say stopped, we're talking about changing the legal classification of that land from road to simply fee simple land to be amalgamated with a neighbour. So the strip of land has never formed part of the formed road. It's been occupied by the adjoining landowner, and this item's been publicly notified. We've had no objections. So it's really a bit of a legal tidy up of an occupation, private landowner on what is legally road. So it's a final tidy up.
This has been before council.
Yeah, it has, and to approve in principle, and then we publicly notify it. We've had no objections, so now it's we need a final resolution to declare that section of road.
Any
strip of road
questions?
stopped.
Quick question through you, Mr Chair. So is the third part of this process that we'll see a sale paper at some stage?
No, we won't be coming back to council. So part of the resolution is the second part B is resolved that the stop road is sold to the owner of the adjoining land, and that strip of land is amalgamated in their title. So no, we won't be coming back for council. And they pay market value for that land.
Right.
As part of the agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's moved by councillor Brown, seconded by councillor Crystal. Would you like to speak?
Oh, look, it's just good to tidy this up. Imagine that would have been a little bit odd for the landowner, so it'd be nice to have all of their land in one title. So, brilliant.
No further.
Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, Brian. Licensed Occupier Reserve, Park Island Reserve.
Once again, this is a matter under the Reserves Act, and we're simply seeking approval to grant a licence to occupy to Aotearoa Towers Group for the licence to occupy the telecommunication station at Park Island, and this tower is immediately behind the artificial hockey turfs, so it's right out of the way. I would emphasise it's been there for 20 years, but the licence has expired, and so it's important to renew that licence for the cell phone network operated by Vodafone and 2 Degrees. Once again, it's been there for 20 years, no impact on the reserve, so we're quite confident under the Reserves Act. This is allowed. We don't believe there's any need for public notification or what have you. Say again, it's been there for 20 years.
Any questions?
I'm on
You
fire.
after some more money?
Yeah, I'm on fire today. I am after some more money. I note that there is a licence fee you note in the paper, and so my question is just around the structure of that fee. Is that something that I haven't seen that in our fees and charges policy?
No, it's
is
not
that,
the fees and charges schedule. It's common, different to the Ridgetop Reserve, but in this case, this is a commercial organisation, what was Vodafone, or One New Zealand now. That's commercial operations, so we do charge an annual licence fee for that licence to occupy, and that amount is sort of standard throughout New Zealand, so it's quite a standard fee with our other...
that was going to be my question. Is it benchmarked? Are we sure we're getting as much as practical for
yes,
that
quite
licence to
confident
occupy?
that it's consistent across the country, really.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't see that in our fees and charges schedule?
Well, in terms of all our leases and licensed occupiers, no, they're not listed in the schedule of fees and charges. They're sort of on a case-by-case basis. So
it is kind of up for negotiation with each
yes,
leasee.
yeah.
Thank you.
Have any other questions? Do I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Brosnan?
No.
Are you not moving it?
Yep.
Oh, Councillor Terry, seconded Councillor Mawson.
No concerns.
Yeah.
Good that people get coverage.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Brian. And well done. Capital program delivery. Jamie, it's your show now.
Do it from here?
Yeah, do it
Yeah,
from here.
yeah. Good morning, everyone. Pretty brief report this time. So we'll take it as read, just note a couple of points. One of them being that there's some commentary in there on some of the financials. This was pretty much discussed at the Prosperous Napier meeting a couple of weeks back, but happy to elaborate on any of this if required. The only thing I would point out is since my report was prepared, that we met at People and Places with the Art Deco Trust, and we received approval from the committee to stage the Memorial Square Community Rooms project. So that has mitigated the risk that I had highlighted in my little list of projects there associated with schedule and the finances. So those little amber squares will go back to green on the next report. But yeah, happy to take any questions.
So do I have any questions? Jamie apologises, no photographs this meeting. Councillor Brown.
Just being a bit of a broken record here, can we get an update on the latest and greatest on the Onslow steps?
Yeah, sure, I can give you a wee bit of a heads up on that now. It is a challenging site. So things are progressing there. The biggest issue we have with completing that project is actually accessing the site. So there is a neighbouring property at Brewster Street that we're looking to gain access over, but that property itself has some structural issues on the driveway. So the latest proposal there is to crane in the equipment. We have craned in equipment previously. So in that respect, we are still progressing. But yeah, I feel your pain. It is a tough site, and it's just one of those sites that it's just taking a wee bit longer to complete than we'd hoped.
Yep, thank you. And just one more. Just on that Clyde Road retaining wall, I just think I noticed an error. So it says that it's all going to be completed by March 24, but it says that we're still working on it.
Clyde?
Just a tiny little pickup there. Number 10.
Oh, yes, gotcha.
0982.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. Thank you. I can tidy that up. I suppose since this report was prepared as well, of course, the Gleeson Playgrounds opened, so I saw a bit of stuff on that on Napier News, so that is a good one to complete.
I'll just speak to that. We had the opening last night and we got such amazing positive feedback from the community. One mother said that her kids, she hadn't seen them until dinner time every night that week as soon as that green field was open. So the kids of that area are just so stoked to have that playground and that space available to them again. So it's been 4 years. It's out since the flood. So
oh, that's great.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Couldn't let a paper go by. Quick question. Could we possibly add to the list of project updates? I'm particularly interested on the stormwater work for the Ahuriri Regional Park, Lagoon Farm, and I just wonder if we could have that added to regular updates.
Yeah.
Don't need one now, but just for future reports.
At next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
that's
certainly
right.
do
Thank
that.
you.
I had outlined previously that this sort of report that I prepare is just for my sort of little team. I know that in Phil's team, they report on all their Three Waters projects as well. So it's an area that Council's looking to improve, so actually reporting across the program rather than just little subsets. Yeah, we're making good progress in that area. So going forward, yeah, my preference is to report on the whole capital program, not just little subsets. and certainly the work that Rachel will be leaning into with the EPMO will hopefully start to make a bit of progress in that space as well.
Great, thank you.
By the next meeting, if we haven't got anything else, we will add that in. Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a mover for the this officer's recommendation, please? Councillor Gregg, seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Would you like to speak?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Nothing to say? Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, I'll adjourn the Sustainable Napier meeting and hand over 5 minutes and hand over to Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you.